Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into the extraordinary life and the really profound teachings of Siddhartha Gautama. I mean, this is a figure whose wisdom has resonated for, what, over 2 millennia, profoundly shaping philosophies and guiding millions across the globe.
Absolutely. A monumental figure, really.
So our mission today, for you, our listener, is to kind of extract the most important nuggets of knowledge. And the core teachings that, continue to inspire and transform lives.
Yeah, and we've got a pretty diverse stack of sources for this deep dive.
We do. We've pulled from scholarly articles giving historical context, some profound excerpts from Zen community teachings, detailed historical timelines, even the ancient verses of the Dhammapada, and foundational texts on the Noble Eightfold Path itself.
So a good mix to draw from.
Exactly. And this isn't just like a history lesson. We see it as a journey into ideas that might offer some of those aha moments about life, suffering, the path to inner peace, things like that.
Relevant stuff.
Totally. So whether you're prepping for a meeting, catching up on a field, or just, insanely curious about one of history's most influential minds, we promise to deliver this knowledge quickly but thoroughly, multiple perspectives, memorable details, but hopefully without overwhelming you. Sound good?
Sounds great. Let's start at the beginning.
Perfect.
It's truly a monumental figure we're exploring. Someone whose impact on, well, human thought and spirituality is almost unparalleled. To really get his teachings, you kind of have to understand his early life first.
Right. The context.
Exactly. Siddhartha Gautama, that was his original name, born over 2,500 years ago in what's now Nepal, basically foothills of the Himalayas.
And he's often called Shakyamuni Buddha or Gautama Buddha.
That's right. And it's really important to note right away, while he was definitely an extraordinary being, he is not considered a god. That's explicit.
Okay, crucial point.
Yeah. The term Buddha itself, it just means awakened one, someone who woke up.
That distinction right from the start feels, crucial. So what was the world like when this awakened one arrived? What was the backdrop?
Well, his birth was during a really vibrant, dynamic period in India. Historians call it the second urbanization in the Ganges Basin.
So, lots happened.
Oh, yeah. We're talking cities growing rapidly, new ideas popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
There was this emerging sense of, maybe, egalitarianism, people questioning the old ways.
Okay.
And his teachings, you see, they weren't just abstract philosophy dreamt up in isolation. They were a direct response to these historical changes, the rise of state structures, these growing urban centers, the whole shifting social landscape.
Makes sense.
And even though Buddhist renunciates, withdrew from society in one sense, they deliberately chose to live near villages and cities. They relied on lay supporters for alms, for food.
So they were still connected.
Very much so. That proximity meant his message directly engaged with those societal shifts, offering a pretty radical new path for people trying to navigate this changing world.
That makes perfect sense. Profound teachings often come right out of the conditions they're trying to address. Now, his early life, it's famously one of almost like unimaginable luxury, right? A prince, totally shielded.
Totally. Shielded from suffering inside the palace walls, but then came this seismic shift, what's often called his noble quest.
Sparked by the famous 4 sights, yeah. This is where his perfect little bubble started to burst, isn't it?
Absolutely. These 4 encounters just completely changed how we saw the world. I mean, imagine living a life where you literally never see sickness, old age, or death.
Hard to even conceive of.
Right. His father, the king, made sure of it. He was hoping to keep Siddhartha from pursuing a spiritual path, actually. So the first sight was an old man, frail, bent with age.
Something he'd never encountered before.
Never. He'd lived in this artificially preserved youthfulness. It wasn't just seeing an old person. It was this sudden, profound realization of his own inevitable aging. A total shock to his carefully constructed reality.
Wow. Okay, and then the second sight, even more distressing, I imagine.
Precisely. The second sight was a man suffering from disease. Just seeing that raw pain, the sickness, it shook him deeply. He started grappling with the unfairness and inevitability of physical suffering.
It's one thing to hear about it, another to see it right there.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Feeling that visceral pang of empathy, confronting how vulnerable the human body actually is.
And then the third sight, the ultimate reality, death.
Indeed. The third sight was a dead person. And that encounter brought up these deep existential questions for him. He saw the impermanence of all life right there.
Yeah.
Our sources say his mind was just aflame with thoughts of suffering and impermanence. These first 3 sights, hitting someone so utterly unprepared. It must have been devastating.
But then the fourth sight offered something different. A way out, maybe.
Exactly. A path towards something beyond this suffering he was suddenly seeing everywhere. The fourth sight was an ascetic, a spiritual renunciant, a mendicant who had given up worldly life. And this figure, looking calm, serene, amidst all the suffering Siddhartha had just witnessed, it presented this profound possibility. Maybe there was a path to seek liberation from this cycle of suffering.
So these four sights together just flipped a switch.
You can say that. They catalyzed a seismic shift in Siddhartha's worldview, as the sources put it, really propelled him towards renunciation.
Which led to the Great Departure, his renunciation. One of the most famous decisions in religious history, really. He decided he had to leave that life of luxury. He renounced everything.
Everything. Even as the story goes, silently saying goodbye to his beloved wife and child in the middle of the night.
Wow. And his parents.
The sources mention they wept with tearful faces at his decision. It highlights just how profound and difficult this choice was. It wasn't casual. It was this deep spiritual calling.
He felt suffocated, right? He said something like, the household life is narrow, the samana life is the free open air.
Exactly. He truly felt he needed that freedom to find the answers.
So his quest then took him down this path of really intense asceticism. A common path in India then.
Oh, yes. A deeply ingrained tradition. For years, he wandered through forests, plains, embracing severe self-discipline and abstention from all forms of indulgence, really pushing his body to extreme limits.
Why? What was the thinking there?
He followed various ascetic practices, believing that through that kind of extreme self-denial, he could achieve spiritual enlightenment. He even sought out teachers. One of his first, Alar Kalam, apparently found him incredibly sharp. Mastered every lesson quickly.
A quick study.
Prodigious, yeah. Quickly exhausted what his teachers could offer him on that path.
So he pushed himself to the absolute limit of endurance. Believing this self-mortification was the key to wisdom. He really committed.
He really did.
But that wasn't the final answer for him, was it?
No, it wasn't. And this is what's truly fascinating, a really pivotal turning point. He realized that extreme asceticism was not the way to wisdom. He discovered that torturing the body didn't actually free the mind. The real source of trouble, he saw, was a mind obsessed by greed, aversion, delusion, not the physical body itself.
Oh, okay.
So famously, he accepted a simple bowl of rice pudding from a village woman named Sujata. This marked his return to a more balanced approach. He ate, regained his strength, and basically prepared for a different kind of inner work.
That sounds like a massive realization, a huge aha moment that led him somewhere totally new.
It really was.
This is what we now know as the middle way, right? A foundational concept.
Exactly. The middle way became an integral teaching in Buddhism, not just for him, but for everyone who followed. It means existing between two extremes.
Avoiding both the luxury he left behind and the extreme self-denial he'd just tried.
Precisely. Avoiding both self-indulgence and self-denial. It's a balanced approach to life. He taught that neither indulgence nor severe asceticism was the way to enlightenment. It's all about balance, moderation, finding that sweet spot where wisdom can actually flourish.
And this middle way, this new understanding, led him to the moment that changed everything. His enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. Can you paint a picture of that? It's so central.
Indeed. After giving up the extreme practices, Siddhartha sat down under a pipal tree later called the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, Bihar. And he made this profound vow.
What was the vow?
He vowed he would not get up until he attained supreme enlightenment.
Wow. That's commitment.
Intense. It wasn't a passive wait either. It was a deep, intense 49-day meditation. He was diving deeper than ever before into the nature of reality.
And during this intense period, he faced some serious challenges, right? Personified by this figure, Mara, often shown as a demon.
That's right. Mara, often seen as the ruler of the desire realm, tried everything to stop him from reaching enlightenment.
How? What did Mara do?
Well, the stories say Mara assailed Siddhartha with armies of demons and vile cravings, trying to stir up fear and attachment. He also sent his 3 seductive daughters representing desire, discontent, and delight to distract him, trying to pull him back to worldly pleasures and attachments.
It sounds like a real psychological battle, trying to pull him back to everything he'd given up.
Exactly. A battle against his own inner demons, you could say. Yet Siddhartha remained unmoved, realizing their illusory nature. He saw through the tricks.
You didn't buy it?
Nope. As Mara's forces pressed in, Siddhartha famously touched the ground with his right hand, This gesture, calling the earth to testify to his worthiness, it symbolized his unwavering resolve, his connection to truth.
And the earth responded.
The sources say the earth responded with a deafening roar, dispelling Mara and his forces. It was like this profound affirmation. He was ready. His intention was pure. He had the right to claim this insight.
And then the dawn broke on his 49th day of meditation.
Yes. As dawn broke on Siddhartha's 49th day of meditation, he transcended. He became the enlightened Buddha. He achieved that profound realization he had sought for so long, a complete, perfect awakening.
So Buddha, what does it actually mean in the deepest sense? What did he awaken to?
Buddha literally means awakened one, or one who has awakened. It signifies someone who has achieved the enlightenment that leads to release from that continuous cycle of birth and death, which is called samsara.
Right, samsara, liberation from that.
And this liberation isn't just about escaping physical death. It's freedom from the very forces that keep that cycle going.
And samsara itself isn't just like simple reincarnation, is it? It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It's described as the continuous cycle of rebirth, or the wandering, a cycle without discoverable beginning. And fundamentally, it's characterized by what's called dukkha.
Dukkha, often translated as suffering.
Often, yes, but it's maybe more accurately understood as a pervasive unsatisfactoriness or unease. Think about trying to hold water in a sieve, it just slips through, right? Dukkha is that inherent frustration, that deep unease that comes from always seeking lasting happiness, from things that are inherently impermanent, unstable, unreliable.
So anything that comes into being, anything conditioned, can't ultimately satisfy us.
Exactly. It's a life dictated by automatic responses and habituated selfishness. That's dukkha.
Okay, so enlightenment is liberation from that, from this pervasive dissatisfaction. And how is this liberation attained? Not just for the Buddha, but for anyone on this path.
The Buddha taught that the path to enlightenment is attained by using morality, meditation, and wisdom. These three aren't separate steps. They work together. Each one supports the others.
A three-legged stool, almost.
Kind of, yeah. And what's really crucial to understand about the Buddha's teachings is that they really center around two basic principles: the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path.
Okay, those sound foundational.
They are. They form the theoretical framework and the practical guide for pretty much everything that follows. They're truly the bedrock of his entire message.
Got it.
And, we connect this to the bigger picture, what it means to actually practice Buddhism. One of the most fundamental concepts is the triple treasure, or the three jewels.
The three jewels.
These are the core refuges in all Buddhist traditions, the pillars that the practice rests on.
Sounds essential. What are they?
So the first is the Buddha himself, Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical figure, the awakened one. Taking refuge in the Buddha means recognizing that awakening is possible for you by following his example and trusting his path.
Okay, the example and the possibility.
The second is Dharma. This mainly refers to the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, but also, more broadly, the law or true nature of existence. It's the wisdom, the path to liberation he discovered and shared.
So not just the words, but the underlying truth they point to, the map.
Precisely, the map to reality itself. And the third jewel is Sangha. This is the community of Buddhist practitioners, monks, nuns, lay people, local groups, the global community. Most widely, it means all awakening beings.
The community of fellow travelers.
Exactly. It's the community that supports and practices the Dharma. It provides that vital network for shared spiritual effort, mutual support, inspiration. Taking refuge in these three Buddha, Dharma, Sangha signifies your commitment and trust in the path.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, you mentioned earlier that suffering as a cause. Buddhism talks about core defilements, right? Things that keep us stuck in samsara.
Yes, these are known as the three poisons. They are greed, hatred, and ignorance.
Greed, hatred, and ignorance.
They're considered the root defilements, the things that perpetuate the cycle of samsara, endlessly binding us to dissatisfaction. If you look at Buddhist art, especially the Bhavacakra, the wheel of life.
Yeah, I've seen images of that.
Right at the very center, the hub, you'll often see a rooster, a snake, and a pig. They represent these three poisons: greed, hatred, and ignorance, driving the whole cycle. They're seen as the fundamental source of all suffering and conflict, the prime motivators for unwholesome actions.
Wow. So if those are the poisons, are there antidotes, qualities that practitioners are encouraged to cultivate to counteract them?
Absolutely. Those are the Brahma Viharas, sometimes called the heavenly abodes or divine abidings. These are qualities you actively cultivate as antidotes to the poisons and really as a path to true happiness.
Okay, what are they?
The first is loving kindness, or metta. It's described as an intense feeling of selfless love for other beings radiating outwards as a heartfelt concern for their well-being and happiness.
So it's more than just being nice.
Much more. It's a deep inner feeling, warmth, benevolence, and it's cultivated through meditation. Often you start with yourself because genuine loving kindness for others often grows from self-acceptance, and then you systematically extend it outwards.
How does that work, extending it?
You use your own innate wish for happiness as the key. You project it onto others. You wish that they too may achieve ultimate well-being. You practice directing metta methodically. First to a dear person, then a friend, then someone neutral, and this is crucial, to a hostile person.
Even someone you have difficulty with.
Especially them, eventually. Then you widen it out directionally until you try to suffuse the entire world with the mind of loving kindness, vast, sublime, and immeasurable, without enmity, without aversion.
That sounds incredibly transformative. What are the other Brahma Viharas?
There's compassion, karuna. That's empathetic concern for others' suffering, wishing them freedom from their distress. Then sympathetic joy, mudita, rejoicing in the happiness and success of others, genuinely delighting in their good fortune without any envy.
That one can be tough sometimes.
It can be, yeah. It requires overcoming comparison. And finally, equanimity, upekkha. This is about a steady, balanced mind, remaining undisturbed by life's ups and downs, seeing all beings impartially, without clinging or aversion. These four are really central to ethical growth and purifying the mind.
Okay, so cultivate these positive states. Now, Buddhism also talks about fundamental truths about reality itself, right? The three seals, what are they?
Yes, the three seals, or three marks of existence. These are fundamental characteristics of everything conditioned that the Buddha realized. The first is impermanence, anicca.
Everything changes.
Everything. All things come to an end. Conditioned phenomena are in constant process, happenings which break up and perish almost as soon as they arise. It's not just about big things like death. It's the constant flux of every single moment, every thought, every sensation. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is permanent.
Which, if we cling to things thinking they are permanent, naturally leads to dissatisfaction. The second seal.
Exactly. The second is suffering dissatisfaction, dukkha, which we talked about. It signifies that nothing that comes to be, nothing conditioned, is ultimately satisfying. Because everything is impermanent, trying to find lasting happiness or security in anything conditioned, it inevitably leads to frustration, unease, dukkha.
And the third seal, this one seems particularly dark.
It is. The third seal is non-self, anatta. This is the profound teaching that nothing in our experience can truly be called I or mine in a permanent, unchanging way. The idea of a fixed, unchanging self or soul, Buddhism sees that as an error, a misconception.
So what is a person then, according to this?
A person is understood as a complex flow of physical and mental phenomena, constantly changing, interdependent. Like a river, it looks like one thing, but the water flowing in it is never the same from one moment to the next. That's anatta. These three marks, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, non-self, they're deeply interwoven. Understanding them is key to liberation.
Understanding those three marks. Wow, okay. What about the path of ethical development? You mentioned paramitas, or perfections. What are those guiding virtues?
Right, the 10 paramitas. These are qualities to be cultivated, often seen as developing over many lifetimes to achieve full awakening. The most commonly discussed, the foundational ones, are the 6 paramitas.
What are the 6?
They are dana, that's generosity or giving; shila, morality or ethical conduct; chanti, patience, forbearance; virya, vitality, energy or zeal; dhyana, meditative concentration; and prajna, wisdom.
Generosity, morality, patience, energy, concentration, wisdom. Got it. And there are 4 more.
Correct. There are 4 additional ones that make the full 10. Upaya, skillful means, adapting teachings to the listener; Pranadhana, determination or aspiration, the strong resolve to attain enlightenment for all beings; Bala, spiritual strength or power; and Jnana, knowledge, a deeper, more comprehensive understanding.
So these perfections are crucial for ethical and spiritual growth.
Very much so. And giving dana is often really emphasized, especially in Theravada Buddhism. It's seen as the beginning of virtue. It's not just about giving alms to monks and nuns, but generosity in general. It generates good merit, sure, but maybe more importantly, it helps cultivate non-attachment. It loosens the grip of self-centeredness.
Okay, that provides a good framework for the qualities to cultivate.
Right, which brings us back to that really important question. How does one achieve this liberation from suffering, this ultimate awakening?
Yeah, the how.
The answer lies squarely in the Four Noble Truths. These are absolutely essential to understanding the religion. They provide the theoretical framework for the aspiration for final liberation. Think of it like a doctor's diagnosis and prescription for the human condition.
A diagnosis and prescription. I like that. Okay, so these are the core insights the Buddha had about suffering and how to end it. What's the first truth? The diagnosis.
The first noble truth is dukkha, suffering or unsatisfactoriness. It states quite starkly that all life is suffering.
All life. That sounds pretty bleak.
Well, it's not just about obvious physical pain or sadness, though it includes those. As we discussed, it's more that pervasive inadequacy and wretchedness of everything conditioned. Birth is suffering, old age is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, grief, dissatisfaction, all dukkha. The Buddha even said, there is no ill like the aggregates of existence, meaning our very existence, composed of these changing parts we cling to, is inherently unsatisfactory because we seek permanence in the impermanent.
Okay, so that's the fundamental problem, the diagnosis. What's the origin? The cause. That must be the second truth.
Exactly. The second noble truth is samudaya, the origin of suffering. The cause of suffering, the Buddha taught, is craving. The Pali word is tanha.
Craving, tanha.
Yeah. It's described as the yearning for pleasure, possessions, and being, which drives us through the round of rebirths. It's not just simple desire. It's that insistent, grasping, often insatiable quality of desire. It creates a sense of lack, the pain of want. It constantly pushes us forward in samsara. It's really the engine of our discontent.
So it's not just wanting things, but the craving for them, the grasping, that's the problem. And the solution, then, the third noble truth.
Logically, yes. The third noble truth is nirodha, the cessation of suffering. If craving is the cause, then to end suffering, you have to eliminate craving down to its subtlest depths. The complete stopping of craving is the stopping of suffering.
Simple in concept, maybe not so simple in practice.
Definitely not simple in practice. But that's the goal. This cessation is the ultimate aim, nibbana or nirvana, the deathless, the unconditioned state where there's no more birth, aging, death, and therefore no more suffering. It's not annihilation, but extinguishing the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance.
And finally, the roadmap, the how-to, the practical steps to actually achieve that cessation.
That's the fourth noble truth, magga, the path to the cessation of suffering. And this path is none other than the Noble Eightfold Path. The Dhammapada calls it the only way to deliverance from suffering. It's the practical discipline you undertake to uproot and eliminate the underlying causes of suffering, leading directly to nibbana.
Okay, the Noble Eightfold Path. Before we dive into the details of that, maybe we should quickly clarify two other really fundamental concepts that often get misunderstood. Karma and rebirth, how do they fit in?
Good idea. They're definitely intertwined with this whole framework. Karma is basically understood as the law of cause and effect. Literally, the word just means action.
Just act.
Well, in Buddhism, it specifically refers to volitional action, actions that have intent behind them. The Buddha famously said, by karma, I mean intention.
Ah, intention is key.
Absolutely. So all thoughts, words, and deeds derive their moral value, positive or negative, from the intention behind them. The ethical weight comes from the volition, the why, not just the outward act.
So it's not fate, it's about the quality of your actions driven by your intentions. And this karma leads to consequences, right? Like seeds ripening.
Exactly. Karma is seen as an impersonal natural law, much like physics. Specific actions lead to specific results. It leads to retributive consequences called vipaka, or follow ripenings or fruits. Unwholesome actions, those driven by greed, hatred, ignorance, they eventually ripen into suffering. Wholesome actions driven by generosity, kindness, wisdom, they ripen into happiness.
And this ripening doesn't always happen right away. It can span lifetimes.
Correct. That's where rebirth comes in. Rebirth, often used interchangeably with reincarnation, is that continuous cycle of rebirth, where beings wander from one state of existence to another. It's a core part of traditional Buddhist cosmology. Your actions, your karma, in this life, are seen to determine the conditions of your next life.
But you mentioned some modern scholars see it differently.
Yeah, it's worth noting that some modern scholars regard it as inessential to Buddhist ethics, focusing more on the psychological and ethical implications in this life. And some East Asian Buddhists might interpret it more metaphorically, like the constant moment-to-moment arising and ceasing of experience. But traditionally, rebirth is absolutely key to understanding the long-term karmic process and the full scope of liberation from samsara.
Okay, got it. So let's unpack this Noble Eightfold Path then. It's called the middle way, the only way to deliverance. Not just rules, but a cumulative and gradual step-by-step process. How is it structured?
Right, it definitely avoids those two extremes. indulgence, and self-torture. It's typically grouped into three main sections, a threefold training. First is moral discipline, sila. Second is concentration, samadhi. And third is wisdom, panya.
Sila, samadhi, panya.
Exactly. And these aren't like sequential steps. You finish one, then start the next. They're facets you cultivate simultaneously. Each one supports and strengthens the others.
Okay, let's start with the foundation then. Moral discipline, sila. What factors are in this group? What kind of conduct does it involve?
Sila, moral discipline, it restrains unwholesome actions, promotes good conduct, and aids mental purification. It's not just about following rules blindly. It's about creating an ethical base that lets the mind settle down, gain clarity, which is needed for deeper insight. It includes three factors of the path.
Three factors. Okay, what's the first?
First is right speech. This means avoiding four kinds of harmful speech.
False speech or lying. The key here is the intent to deceive. The Buddha used this really strong analogy with his son Rahula using a bowl of water. He said if you tell a deliberate lie, you basically discard whatever spiritual achievement you have made. Just like throwing away the water empties the bowl.
Wow, strong words.
Yeah. Truthful speech, on the other hand, aligns your inner being with reality. It's seen as a parallel to wisdom.
Slanderous speech or divisive talk. Don't repeat things to cause trouble between people. The opposite is speech that promotes friendship and harmony, coming from kindness.
Harsh speech, angry speech. Stuff uttered in anger meant to hurt, abuse, insults, sarcasm. The positive side is speaking gently, politely, words that are pleasing to the ear. And number 4, idle chatter, pointless talk, gossip, rambling that stirs up negativity or distraction. The advice is to curb it. Focus on things of genuine importance, especially for monks and nuns.
And for lay people.
For lay people, it's about being mindful not to let talk just drift into negativity or fuel restless desires. Some modern teachers even apply this to, say, mindlessly consuming media. It can leave the mind passive, vacant, and sterile. It's about cultivating beneficial communication.
That's really comprehensive for just speech. Okay, what about actions? The second factor in sila.
That's right, action. This covers bodily conduct. It involves abstaining from 3 main types of unwholesome actions.
Abstaining from taking life. This applies broadly, refrain from killing any sentient being. Practically, that means human beings, animals, and insects. Plants generally aren't included there.
Okay.
The moral weight varies. Killing a human is heavier than an animal. The motive matters. Hatred worse than greed. Premeditation matters. The positive side is actively developing kindness and compassion for other beings.
Abstaining from taking what is not given, basically stealing. Appropriating stuff that isn't yours with thievish intent. Includes secret stealing, robbery, fraud, deceit. Again, the weight depends on the object's value, the victim, the intent. The positive counterpart is bhakti, contentment, and especially generosity.
Abstaining from sexual misconduct. The aim here is to protect marital relations and promote trust. For lay people, it means avoiding illicit partners, someone married or under guardianship, nuns, etc. Any forced or coercive sex is obviously a major transgression.
And for monks and nuns?
For monks and nuns, this becomes a strict vow of celibacy. For everyone, it's about respectful, non-harmful sexual relations.
Okay, so ethical conduct for harmony, respecting others, curbing attachment. What about how you make a living? Is that covered too?
Absolutely. That's the third factor in sila.
Yeah.
Right. Livelihood. You need to earn your living in a way that doesn't cause harm. Specifically, don't trade in weapons, poisons, alcohol, or flesh, like being a butcher or hunter. You're seen as complicit in suffering then.
Makes sense.
It also means avoiding lying, stealing, or deceit in your job. Honest business practices. It's broken down further into rightness regarding actions, diligent work, rightness regarding persons, respectful treatment of everyone involved, and rightness regarding objects, truthful sales, no deceptive ads. It's about bringing your ethics right into your daily work.
Okay, so that's sila, the ethical foundation. What's the next major division of the path?
The second division is concentration, or samadhi. This is all about bringing the mind to stillness for deeper insight. You move from restraining harmful actions to directly training the mind itself. Right. Because, a chaotic mind can't see things clearly.
Right. You need some stability to observe reality properly. What are the factors here?
This part also has 3 factors, building on each other. First is right effort. This is the energy, the sustained application needed for mental training. It's a constant 4-part practice of managing your inner world.
4 parts. Okay.
1. Preventing unwholesome states. Actively stop negative thoughts or defilements from even arising.
Abandoning unwholesome states. Skillfully get rid of negative states that have arisen, like the famous 5 hindrances. Sensual desire, ill will, dullness, drowsiness, restlessness, worry, and doubt.
How do you abandon them?
The Buddha gave specific strategies, like radiating loving kindness to counter ill will, or focusing on impermanence to dilute desire, things like that.
Arousing wholesome states. Actively cultivate positive states. Mindfulness, energy, joy, etc.
Maintaining wholesome states. Keep the positive qualities going once they've arisen. Don't let them fade. It's like gardening, constantly weeding and feeding the good plants.
So it's a very active, diligent process of managing your mind.
Yeah.
What's next in this concentration section?
Next is right mindfulness. This is about the steadying points for awareness. You rivet your awareness on the present moment. You watch thoughts, feelings, sensations as they arise, without judgment, without getting tangled up in them. You prevent the mind from adding layers of greed, aversion, or delusion onto the raw data of experience.
So just observing what is?
Yeah.
Clear.
Exactly. It ensures the mind sees objects as it is without being led astray. This provides the clarity needed for real insight.
And the final factor in concentration. This is probably what most people think of as meditation.
That's right, concentration, or jhana. This is about unifying the mind, achieving undistracted focus. You get there through developing serenity, samatha bhavana, which calms the mind, and developing insight, vipassana bhavana, which sharpens clear seeing.
What do you focus on?
The most common focus object recommended is mindfulness of breathing, just paying attention to the breath going in and out. Through practice, you can enter progressively deeper states of absorption, the four jhanas. These are stages of deep mental unification and tranquility, moving from joy and ease to profound equanimity and one-pointedness.
Sounds very peaceful.
Extremely. But, and this is important, even these highly exalted states still lack the wisdom of insight. They aren't enough on their own for full liberation. They calm the mind, make it workable, but they don't necessarily uproot the deep-seated defilements that cause suffering. Concentration creates stillness, but you still need wisdom.
Okay. Concentration brings the stillness, the calm, but wisdom is the tool that actually cuts through the ignorance, the ultimate tool for liberation.
Exactly. Which brings us to the third and final division of the Noble Eightfold Path, wisdom or paññākanda. The whole goal here is to generate insights that reveal ultimate truth, to directly see the real nature of things beneath our usual conditioned perceptions.
So this is where the deep understanding, the knowing, comes in. What are the two factors here that lead to wisdom?
The first is right view. This is about directly seeing the real nature of phenomena. It goes beyond just intellectual understanding to actual experiential realization. It develops in two stages.
Two stages of right view.
Yeah. First, there's the right view that accords with the truths. This means getting a clear intellectual grasp of the Four Noble Truths by learning, studying, reflecting on them until you have strong conviction. But then comes the second stage. Right view that penetrates the truths.
Penetrates? How?
This is the experiential realization gained through meditation. It comes from contemplating the five aggregates of clinging, our physical form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, and directly seeing their three universal marks: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. When this insight peaks, the mind shifts focus to nibbana, the unconditioned, seeing all conditioned things as dukkha and realizing craving is the cause. This direct vision penetrates all Four Noble Truths at once. It's truly seeing reality as it is.
Wow. That's profound. And the second factor in the wisdom division, it sounds like it turns that view into volition, action.
That's right intention. It's described as a true renunciation of defilements born out of deep understanding. It's the crucial link between how you see things, right view, and how you act. It's not about forcing yourself. It's a natural redirection of your will based on that deeper seeing.
How does that work? What are the intentions?
The Buddha explained it as threefold.
The intention of renunciation. This counters the intention of desire. It comes from truly understanding desire's nature, how it always creates that sense of lack, that pain of want, how it's shadowed by dukkha. When you really see that, desire naturally starts to fall away because you see its futility.
The intention of goodwill. This counters ill will or aversion. The remedy here is metta, loving kindness, that intense feeling of selfless love for other beings, actively cultivated until it becomes your default response.
The intention of harmlessness. This counters harmfulness or cruelty. You develop it by reflecting on how all beings wish to be free from suffering, just like you do. This fosters a strong intention not to cause harm to any living thing.
So these intentions aren't just passive wishes, they're actively cultivated states of mind that transform you. It really is a complete system, isn't it? guiding you from basic ethics all the way to profound insight and liberation.
That's the aspiration, yes. And when these 8 factors are cultivated enough, they lead to what's called the supramundane path, the breakthrough to the unconditioned nibbana itself.
The breakthrough, how does that happen?
It occurs in 4 progressive stages. Each stage eliminates specific fetters defilements that bind us to samsara and brings deeper liberation. First is stream entry. This cuts off belief in a permanent self, doubt about the path, and clinging to mere rituals. A stream enterer is guaranteed eventual liberation, maybe in up to 7 more lives, but they can't fall back to lower states. Second is once returner. They've weakened greed, aversion, and delusion further. They'll return to this world at most 1 more time. Third is non-returner. They've completely eliminated sensual desire and aversion. They won't be reborn in the sensual realm again. And fourth is arahatship. This cuts off all remaining fetters, like desire for subtle states of existence, conceit, restlessness, and the last traces of ignorance. An arahat is someone who has realized the end of suffering, totally free from attachment, and has attained nibbana in this very life. They are truly free.
An arahat. Fully liberated. It sounds like an incredibly detailed and, well, profound path. But what about the authenticity of all this? Can we be sure these detailed teachings, the Eightfold Path structure, the Four Noble Truths framework, are these the exact words of the historical Buddha? Is there debate about that among scholars?
That's an excellent and important question. And yes, there is nuanced scholarly debate. Some scholars, like Richard Gombrich or A.K. Warder, argue for a fundamental homogeneity and substantial authenticity in a large part of the early texts. They suggest they're largely the work of one genius.
So mostly authentic.
That's one view, but others, like Tilman Vetter or Lambert Schmidhausen, are more cautious. They suggest that some elements, maybe even core frameworks like the Four Noble Truths or the full Eightfold Path list, might be slightly later formulations or summaries added to what they see as the earliest core of the Buddha's teachings. Vetter, for instance, proposed the earliest core might have been primarily the meditative practice of Dayan, concentration.
So maybe the core ideas were there, but the specific lists and structures evolved a bit after his time.
That's the gist of the more critical view, yeah. It doesn't necessarily undermine the teachings, but suggests a more gradual development of how they were systematized and transmitted.
So not a complete consensus on every single word being original, but maybe a general agreement on the core message, the spirit.
Precisely. And it's a good reminder, isn't it? Critical thinking is essential when we navigate vast amounts of information, even sacred texts. What stands out to you about these different interpretations, listener? Regardless of who formulated the exact lists, the coherence and profound wisdom of these teachings have certainly stood the test of time and continue to guide millions.
That's a great point. Okay, so after his enlightenment, the Buddha didn't just sit there, right? His life continued, marked by spreading his teachings and building the Sangha. How did that community grow?
Right, the Sangha, his spiritual community, really flourished. As the Buddha traveled around India, teaching, gathering followers, the Dharma spread rapidly across the subcontinent. He had key disciples like Sariputta and Moggallana, who were brilliant organizers and teachers themselves. They played huge roles in establishing this resilient institution that's remarkably lasted for millennia. His travels were filled with the conversions and the growth of this community, showing just how powerful his message was.
And a really significant, maybe even revolutionary part of this community's growth was the formation of the Bhikkhuni order, the order for nuns, female monastics. How did that happen? Especially given the times which weren't exactly geared towards female spiritual leadership.
No, definitely not. The formation of the Bhikkhuni order was truly groundbreaking for its context, which was deeply patriarchal. It was Mahaprajapati Gautama, who was actually the Buddha's own stepmother and aunt, who first sought ordination for herself and a group of other women.
And the Buddha agreed right away.
Well, the texts say he initially hesitated. Perhaps, as some scholars suggest, due to genuine concern about the practical danger that the life of a wandering sramana posed for women, back then things like assault or abduction, or maybe concerns about how it might affect the stability of the newly formed monastic order. But eventually he did agree.
What changed his mind?
He was convinced by his attendant, Ananda. Ananda basically argued, are women capable of attaining enlightenment, just like men? And the Buddha had to agree, yes, they are.
So despite maybe some initial practical concerns, the fundamental principle of spiritual equality won out.
Exactly. The key argument Ananda used, which is found in all the early texts on this, was that women had the same ability to reach all stages of awakening. It fundamentally underscored that gender had no influence on one's ability to advance spiritually to nirvana.
And we have evidence of this, women achieving enlightenment.
Absolutely. We have texts like the Therigatha, these incredibly powerful poems written by elder nuns who attained enlightenment, and later Mahayana texts like the Lion's Roar of Queen Srimala Sutra explicitly assert that Buddha nature is inherent in all beings, regardless of gender. Now, there were 8 extra conditions, the Guru Dharmas, that women had to accept for ordination. There's scholarly debate about whether those were original or added later and what their implications were, but the core fact remains. The path to full liberation was open to women.
That's a really important piece of the history. Now, beyond building the Sangha, the Buddha's life is also filled with stories, some maybe miraculous, some just profound teaching moments. Can you share a few anecdotes that really bring his message or character to life?
Certainly, there are many. One lovely one is the monkey's offering of honey. A monkey, just filled with devotion seeing the Buddha, spontaneously offered him some honey it had found. The Buddha accepted it, and the monkey apparently danced with joy. It's simple, but it beautifully illustrates selflessness, compassion, generosity even from an animal, and the joy that comes from giving.
That's sweet. What about something showing his power over, say, aggression?
Well, there's the famous story of the taming of Nalagiri the elephant. This is a fierce, wild elephant, deliberately enraged and set loose to attack the Buddha. But the Buddha just approached it with immense calm, radiating metta, loving kindness. And the elephant instantly became peaceful, bowing down. It starkly illustrates the power of compassion and inner peace over aggression. Even brute force can be quelled by a mind free from ill will.
That's a powerful image. Were there more sort of dramatic displays of his awakened state?
There are stories of the miracle at Shravasti, sometimes called the twin miracle. Here, the Buddha is said to have emitted fire from the upper part of his body and water from the lower part simultaneously, creating this awe-inspiring spectacle.
Wow. Why would he do that?
The accounts say it was to inspire faith and illustrate the extraordinary capabilities of a mind liberated from delusion and attachment. Basically, to reinforce his supreme awakening for those who needed convincing through such means. It's also said he sometimes used simple analogies, like hearing a teacher tuning an instrument not too tight, not too loose to explain the middle path.
And then there's that incredible story about Angulimala, the mass murderer.
Ah, yes, Angulimala, a truly chilling figure who wore a garland, mala, of fingers, anguli, from his victims. He was aiming to make the Buddha his 1,000th victim, but no matter how fast Angulimala ran, he could never get close to the Buddha who was just walking calmly.
How is that possible?
The story suggests it was the Buddha's psychic power, or perhaps Angulimala's own agitated state preventing him. Finally, Angulimala, exhausted and bewildered, yelled for the Buddha to stop. The Buddha stopped and calmly spoke to him. Through his presence and words, Angulimala was overcome with remorse, repented completely, asked for teachings, and actually became a monk, a renunciant follower. He spent the rest of his life trying to atone.
That's unbelievable. What a testament to transformation.
It really illustrates the transformative power of compassion and forgiveness. It shows that even the most violent, hardened individuals aren't necessarily beyond hope or change.
So his life wasn't just abstract philosophy. It was these tangible demonstrations of compassion, peace, transformation, even in the face of extreme violence. Now, let's shift a bit. How did his ethical teachings extend beyond the individual? How did he engage with or critique the big societal structures of his time, like the Brahmanical caste system?
He engaged quite directly, actually. The Buddha famously critiqued Brahmanism, especially its reliance on the divine authority of the Vedas, its elaborate animal sacrifices, and crucially, its rigid caste system. He argued the Vedas weren't divinely inspired. He said rituals like bathing in sacred rivers didn't bring purity, only truth and morality did. And he strongly opposed animal sacrifices that were costly and caused needless suffering.
So he was fundamentally challenging the established religious and social order. Pretty radical.
Hugely radical for the time. He contrasted his own teachings, which he taught openly to everyone, with the Brahmins who kept their mantras secret and exclusive. And most importantly, he completely rejected the idea that someone was superior or pure just because of their birth caste.
How did he argue that?
In texts like the Vasetha Sutta, he argued the main difference between humans isn't birth, it's their actions and occupations. He famously declared, "Not by birth one is a Brahmin. By moral action one is a Brahmin." It was a direct hit at the very core of the caste system.
And this wasn't just theory, right? It translated into real inclusivity in his monastic order.
Absolutely. All castes, including untouchables, were welcome in the Buddhist order. And when someone joined the Sangha, they renounced all caste affiliation. His teaching presented a single universal moral law, one dharma valid for everybody, which was fundamentally opposed to the Brahmanic idea of svadharma, your own duty based on your caste. It was profoundly egalitarian vision for spiritual life.
Amazing. What about politics? Did the Buddha have anything to say about governance or ideal leadership, even if he mostly focused on the spiritual path?
Well, the early texts often show him seeing politics as maybe a tremendous waste of time and effort compared to seeking enlightenment. But he did outline an ideal for governance. The ideal ruler, the wheel-turning leader, or Kakavati, is one who promotes the Dharma, governs justly, gives generously to the needy, actively combats poverty, seeing it as the root of crime, and builds public works like hospitals and parks.
So a kind of enlightened leadership model.
Sort of, yeah. It's almost like an early social contract theory. The Kakavati Sutta, for example, explicitly warns that when leaders fail to provide for the poor, poverty increases, which leads to theft, violence, and a whole breakdown of society. So there's a clear link drawn between just, compassionate governance and societal well-being.
So while the focus was inner transformation, he definitely recognized the importance of a just society and leaders' responsibilities. What about just happiness in this life, beyond nibbana? Did he offer guidance for lay people seeking immediate well-being?
Oh, absolutely. The Buddha definitely taught lay people how to achieve sukha, or happiness, right here and now. He outlined 4 key things: persistent effort in your work, protection of the wealth you earn honestly, cultivating good friendship and supportive companionship, and maintaining balanced living in all areas, not going to extremes.
Practical advice.
Very practical. He also stressed filial love, gratitude within families, and marital well-being. The Sigalovada Sutta, for instance, gives this detailed map of social relationships, husband-wife, parent-child, teacher-student, employer-employee, emphasizing mutual respect and fulfilling your duties to each other. It shows how the Dharma applies directly to everyday life and relationships.
And how did Buddhist ethics view relationships more broadly, like marriage?
Harmony in family and community is definitely valued. Marriage itself in Buddhism is generally seen more as a secular partnership than a religious sacrament. So consequently, there's usually no issue with divorce if the partnership isn't working out or becomes harmful.
Interesting. Secular partnership.
Yeah. And reflecting the cultural context of the time, polyamory and polyandry were actually accepted in some early Buddhist societies. The main emphasis for a good marriage is on mutual respect, fidelity within the agreed structure, support, companionship. The Buddha apparently said a wife and husband should be each other's best friend.
Companionship over dogma. That sounds practical. What about sexuality itself? We talked about right action, including abstaining from sexual misconduct. How is that generally understood?
Right. Sexual misconduct broadly means any sexual conduct which is harmful to others. So things like rape, molestation, and usually adultery, as it harms the marital relationship and trust, fall under this. Interpretations can vary a bit based on local customs and traditions, though.
And for monks and nuns, it's different.
Yes, for monks and nuns, it's a strict vow of celibacy. That's part of their renunciation. Now, on sexual orientation, there's a vast diversity of opinion across Buddhist traditions today. But importantly, the early Pali Sutras have no explicit condemnation of homosexuality.
No explicit condemnation.
None. Some later communities or interpretations might equate same-sex relations with sexual misconduct, but others argue that if sexuality is compassionate, consensual, and doesn't break monastic vows, then there's no karmic infraction, irrespective of whether it is same-sex or not. It's worth noting that in feudal Japan, homosexual relationships were apparently quite common among Buddhist samurai and clergy, especially in some tantric schools.
Fascinating complexity there. What about individuals who might not fit traditional gender categories, especially in the monastic context? Were they allowed?
Yeah, that's another complex area. The Vinaya, the monastic code, generally didn't allow hermaphrodites or individuals identified as pandakas, often interpreted as those lacking typical male sexual characteristics or function, to become monastics.
Why was that?
The stated reasons often revolved around concerns they might seduce monks or nuns or be seen as spiritually hindered. However, some scholars note that pandakas might have initially been allowed into the Sangha before specific rules were codified, suggesting maybe an evolution or tightening of the rules over time.
Okay. Let's shift to economics. What are the Buddhist principles around wealth, money, livelihood, especially relevant today in our consumer world?
Very relevant. Wealth creation isn't condemned in Buddhism. It's actually seen as praiseworthy if it's done morally, ethically, according to right livelihood. Remember, no harm, no deceit, no trading in harmful things.
But there's a critique of just accumulating wealth, right?
Definitely. Buddhism offers a pretty profound critique of what we might call consumer capitalism. Because Buddhism seeks to reduce our desires, Buddhist economics would naturally tend to promote anti-consumerism and simple living. Greed for riches is clearly negative. Contentment is praised as the greatest wealth.
So it's about balance.
It's the middle way again. Poverty and debt are also seen as causes of suffering if they prevent you from meeting basic needs or having peace of mind. So for lay people, the ideal is to acquire and use material things for genuine well-being, but without becoming possessed or used by them.
Right.
Maintaining balance and non-attachment is key.
Okay. Moving to another heavy topic, war and violence. Buddhism is known for nonviolence, ahimsa. How does it address conflict?
The Buddha promoted nonviolence in various ways. It's absolutely central. The root cause of all conflict, individual or collective, is seen as those three poisons again: greed, hatred, and delusion.
The poisons fuel the conflict.
Exactly. The Dhammapada has that powerful verse. The victor begets enmity, the vanquished dwells in sorrow, the tranquil lives happily, abandoning both victory and defeat. Buddhist texts strongly advise against participating in war, selling weapons, or even praising killers.
But history is messy. Have Buddhist states or individuals engaged in war despite these strong ideals?
Yes, unfortunately, history shows that Buddhist states and kingdoms have waged war. And some Buddhists throughout history have found ways to justify conflict, based on specific circumstances or interpretations, sometimes arguing for compassionate killing or defense of the Dharma.
Like the warrior monks in Japan.
Exactly. Buddhist warrior monks in feudal Japan sometimes engaged in organized warfare. And during World War II, tragically, almost all Japanese Buddhist temples strongly supported Japanese imperialism and militarization, sometimes even twisting Buddhist concepts to justify violence, like the idea of killing one in order that many may live. It's a stark reminder of how ideals can clash with historical reality and human failings.
A difficult aspect of the history. Let's touch on some very sensitive ethical issues now. Abortion, suicide, euthanasia. Given the principle of not taking life, what are the general Buddhist stances?
Generally speaking, these actions are rejected based on that first precept, not taking life, and also due to understanding karma. Human life, human rebirth, is seen as incredibly precious and a unique opportunity to do good deeds and attain liberation.
So ending a life prematurely cuts off that opportunity.
That's the traditional view. Also, dying with an unwholesome and agitated state of mind, like in many cases of suicide or difficult end-of-life situations, is believed to create negative karma and lead to an unfavorable rebirth. So, suicide is traditionally seen as unwholesome. Euthanasia, even if motivated by compassion to end suffering, is generally viewed as a breach of the precept because it ends the current life but doesn't solve the underlying karmic issues or prevent future suffering in the cycle of rebirth.
Are there nuances or exceptions, especially in modern contexts?
Yes, there are definitely nuances. Regarding abortion, while most traditional views consider it wrong, taking a life from conception, Buddhists are often less likely to push for laws banning the practice, recognizing the immense complexity of individual situations. The Dalai Lama, for example, has called abortion negative, but also said there are exceptions, and it should be improved or disapproved according to each circumstance, like if the mother's life is at risk.
What about contraception?
Contraception is generally seen as a non-issue, because it prevents conception rather than ending an already established life.
And suicide or euthanasia, any exceptions there?
Well, interestingly, some early Pali texts tell stories of enlightened arahats, like monks named Channa and Vakali, who were terminally ill and chose to end their lives essentially self-euthanasia. Because they did so in a calm and detached state of mind, having already overcome craving and the cycle of karma, the Buddha reportedly did not condemn their actions. This is very different from suicide driven by despair. And self-immolation, as seen in protests in places like Vietnam or Tibet, developed in some traditions as a practice of heroic renunciation, a drastic sacrifice meant to draw attention to suffering, though remains highly controversial.
Very complex. Okay, shifting focus again. The environment and animals. How does Buddhism view our relationship with the natural world, especially given the emphasis on compassion for all sentient beings?
It's a very interconnected view. Buddhism does not see humans as being in a special moral category over animals. Humans are seen as part of nature, not separate from or inherently superior to it. Because humans have a greater capacity for moral choice, they have a responsibility to protect and be kind to animals who are also suffering beings, caught in the same cycle of rebirth.
So, a deep respect for animals. What about nature itself?
Forests were actually considered ideal dwelling places for early Buddhist monks and nuns. There were rules against monks cutting down trees. And in Mahayana Buddhism, some schools even teach that trees and plants have Buddha nature, implying a deep sacredness extending to the whole ecosystem.
How does this relate to the environmental crisis today?
From a Buddhist perspective, the root of the current ecological crisis is often seen as stemming from the belief that increased production and consumption to satisfy our material and sensual desires leads to well-being. It's that same craving, Tana, driving unsustainable practices. The emphasis on contentment and reducing desire offers a powerful counter-narrative.
That makes sense. Does this respect for animals translate into mandatory vegetarianism for Buddhists?
That's a common question, and there's actually a divergence of views within Buddhism on the need for vegetarianism. It's a misconception that all Buddhists are vegetarian. In fact, most Buddhists, eating meat.
Really? Why the difference?
Many Mahayana traditions, especially in China, Vietnam, and most of Korea, do strongly advocate vegetarianism, citing Mahayana sutras that vigorously denounce meat eating as unwholesome. However, the early Pali Canon texts, followed mainly by Theravada Buddhists, do not ban the act of eating meat outright. The rule there from the Javaka Sutta is that monks, and by extension laypeople, can eat meat if they have not seen or heard or suspected that the animal was killed specifically for them.
The threefold pure meat rule.
Exactly. So most Theravada Buddhists do eat meat if it meets that condition. Even the Dalai Lama, while he promotes vegetarianism, isn't strictly vegetarian himself due to health reasons, but he eats vegetarian every other day. The core underlying principle across traditions is avoiding direct participation in or encouragement of killing.
Okay, that clarifies the vegetarianism question. Finally, just briefly, how was the Buddha actually depicted physically? Did his image change over time?
Yes, quite significantly. The earliest sources describe him looking much like other monks of the time, shaved, bald. When he was old, they described his stooped body with slack and wrinkled limbs. He was often hard to pick out from his followers, emphasizing his humanity.
But later images are very distinct.
Right. Later texts started attributing the 32 signs of the great man to him. These were highly stylized physical features: long earlobes, a golden glow, a cranial bump, ushnisha, webbed fingers, etc. Initially, these might have been seen as subtle or imperceptible, but they became standard iconographic markers, portraying him as an extraordinary being and inspiring faith through these physical perfections.
And what happened to Buddhism in India, its birthplace, and how did it spread?
Well, somewhat ironically, Buddhism gradually declined in India itself, especially after the 8th century CE. Reasons are complex, maybe loss of royal patronage, lack of broad popular economic support compared to resurgent Hindu traditions, maybe some invasions. But while it declined in India, it grew more prominent in Southeast and East Asia. It spread remarkably widely along trade routes, through dedicated missionary efforts, and with the crucial support of rulers like Emperor Ashoka in India who sent emissaries out. It adapted and evolved into the diverse and vibrant traditions we see across Asia and now the world today.
And it's fascinating how the Buddha figure even pops up in other religions, sometimes in unexpected ways.
It is really interesting. In Hinduism, as we touched on, he was eventually incorporated into the Vaishnava tradition as the 9th avatar, or incarnation of Vishnu. Though, as mentioned, this is ambiguous. Given that his core teachings deny the authority of the Vedas, this inclusion might have been a strategic way to absorb Buddhist followers and decisively weaken Buddhist power by essentially claiming him while neutralizing his radical critique. Buddhism is generally classified as a heterodox Gnostica school within Hinduism for rejecting the Vedas.
And in Christianity.
Even more surprisingly, perhaps, the story of the Christian Saint Josaphat is actually based on the life of the Buddha. The name Josaphat likely derives from Bodhisattva. The medieval story of Barlaam and Josaphat is essentially a Christianized retelling of Siddhartha's life, his renunciation and quest. It just shows the incredible cross-cultural power and resonance of his story and the wisdom he embodied.
Wow. What an incredible journey we've covered today. From Siddhartha Gautama, the sheltered prince, all the way to the Buddha, the awakened one. We've really explored that extraordinary transformation and dived deep into the core teachings that are still shaping millions of lives, the middle way, the Four Noble Truths, that detailed map of the Noble Eightfold Path. It's really clear why these insights feel so relevant, even thousands of years later.
It really is. And, the Buddha assures us that if we walk this path he laid out, we can bewilder Mara, we can pull out the thorn of lust, we can escape from suffering. But he also puts the responsibility squarely back on us. He cautions, You yourselves must strive. The Buddhas are only teachers.
Right. He shows the way, but we have to walk it.
Exactly. So this deep dive, hopefully, has presented a map to liberation, a guide to understanding and transforming our experience. But the actual exploration, the effort to really implement these insights, well, that's now yours to undertake, listener. So maybe a final thought to mull over. As you reflect on everything we've discussed today, what single principle, what one idea really resonates most strongly with you right now? And how might you, just maybe, begin to explore its application in your own life?
That's a great question to leave folks with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep getting informed.